Pardon the Interruption with Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser on ESPN. Michael Wilbon hates analytics. In this clip, he's going to talk about how much he disagrees with analytics and how it's lazy for announcers to just point to analytics or point to data as reasons for why teams should make decisions. Specifically, he's going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers deciding to go for a 2-point conversion when they were down 8 after being down 14 against the Lions. In this video, we're going to break the whole thing down. I'm going to show you exactly why, mathematically, how it all plays out. And kind of this new way of looking at football and the whole mass media angle of it as far as the mass sports media and whatnot. So let's go ahead and listen to what Wilbon has to say, and then we'll go through what the numbers actually, what they mean.
They did everything they wanted to. The 2-point conversion attempt that left them 8 down. Don't start me with the 2-point conversions. The analytics say go for it. Do the analytics say go for it no matter who's going for it? So if you and I were on the field, the analytics say go for it. It's the stupidest, laziest, lamest thing I've ever heard for reasoning in competition. And I hate when announcers just buy it without questioning it. The analytics say go for it. Jared Goff and that offense, Tony.
So you hear this a lot, right? The term analytics. Analytics is a weird term because I don't think it's used correctly most of the time. In this situation, he's talking about analytics as basically the percentage chance in success of winning the game and this decision point of do you kick the extra point or do you go for 2? The analytics is a big broad term for just data. But what he's talking about is the percentage that ESPN spits out at you or whoever spits out at you. And you always see him say, ESPN's analytic department says go for it, right? Behind the scenes, it's just a percentage. And it's just a percentage of success, expected value, or however you want to quantify it. But the bigger topic is the idea that we're at a real crossroads here with how people watch football and how they watch sports. We've been saying for a few weeks here that it's time to embrace it, and it's time to recognize it's happening. It's time to move on with that change. There's an old school way of looking at things where you always kick the extra point. You don't go for it unless you have to. You know, all these unwritten rules of football. You run on first down, get the fullback involved, all this other stuff. And then there's the new wave of, well, you can actually quantify these decisions. You can quantify certain plays. You know, if it is beneficial to run on first down versus pass for some teams, and vice versa. Stuff like that. I do think there's a blend. I've said that before. I don't think you should be just beholden to the data, but I certainly don't think you should just push the data aside because it's like a new way of thinking. So let's take this exact situation. And I've created a chart, ladies and gentlemen. I've created a chart because it is confusing to just hear me talk about it, okay? So the situation, we have some universal truths, and then we're going to go through the whole thing. So in this exact situation that we saw play out with Tampa and Detroit, Tampa is down 14 points. You see at the top of the screen here, it says down 14. So that's a universal truth, all right? They're down 14. We need 3 more universal truths. Universal truth number 1, and this is just for the example, that an extra point, you 100% of the time make an extra point. I understand it's not 100%. This is just for the example. Universal truth number 2, you have a 50% chance of successfully making a 2-point conversion, okay? Easy number. Universal truth number 3, if you go to overtime, you have a 50% chance of winning, all right? So those are the universal truths. This also implies that if you score, you hold the other team and then you get the ball back. Because if you don't hold them, then it doesn't matter what you do because you're down 2 scores, right? So again, you're down 14. The Buccaneers are down 14. The Buccaneers score. Okay, now they have a decision point. Do you kick or do you go for 2? Here's why you go for 2. Okay? If you kick the extra point and then get the ball back and kick the extra point again, so you're kicking 2 extra points, and you make those 100% of the time, the universal truth, that means you force overtime. You're down 14. You score a touchdown kick, that's 7. Get the ball back, score a touchdown kick, that's 7. You force overtime, so you win 50% of the time. All right, so now you have a 50% chance. Okay, now if you go for 2, If you go for 2 and the first time you go for 2 and you make it, then the next time you kick the extra point, you win the game, right? Because you're down. Obviously, you're down 14 by making the extra point and then kicking. You go up 15, you win the game. All right, that's part of it. But then if you miss, now this is the big point here. If you miss the first time that you go for 2, like the Buccaneers did, so you don't get it, you get an extra chance to do it because, again, you get the ball back, you score. So then you would go for 2 again. Now this time you would be trying to tie the game. Now the universal truth we have is that you make a 2-point conversion 50% of the time. So if you miss it the first time, we can assume you make it the second time, right? And so what does that do? If you do it that way, if you miss the first time, get it the second time, you force overtime, which you have a 50% chance of winning. So it's the same thing, okay? But here's how the math plays out, and this is the most important part. If you kick an extra point, and go to overtime, you're at 4/8, which is a half, which is 50%, which we understand because we've already accepted. If you go to overtime, you have a 50% chance of winning, correct? Correct. So then let's say you miss, and then you make it, and then you force overtime. That's 4/8. You have 50% chance, right? So half times a half times a half, 4/8, 50%, right? So kicking an extra point gives you 4/8, which equals 50%. But don't forget, going for 2 also gives you the possibility of winning the game. Because if you make it the first time, then you score the second time, you kick the extra point, which we're assuming is a 100% make rate. So it's 4/8 plus 1/8, which equals 5/8, which if broken out into a percentile is 62.5%, which is a greater chance of success than 50%. Okay? So just kicking gives you a 50% chance to win in this situation. If you go for 2 the first time, and you're down 14, you score, it raises it all the way to 62.5%. So if you look at it right here, and this is as simple as you can make it. I know it's a lot of me like vocalizing this chart, but the chart is very simple. I mean, if you look at it, it's right there, right under the math section. 4/8 or 5/8, 50% or 62.5%. Obviously, 62.5% is better. Makes total sense. It's as simple as it gets. This is a very simple equation. If you laid it out there, everyone would take the 62.5%. Now, the question is, why does it seem so risky? Why does going for 2 upset people? Why does it seem like you should never do that? Why does it seem like you should just take the points? You always hear that, take the points. Don't go for 2 unless you have to, right? It seems risky because it's complete human nature to just survive. What are humans wired to do? They're wired to survive, okay? So the natural intuition tells people, like fans or coaches or whatever, to extend the game, survive, just tie, keep going, push it to overtime, right? That's what we're told. Just move forward, extend it, survive, don't rock the boat. But in reality, that's not what we're trying to do. In a football game or a basketball game or a baseball game or wherever you have this kind of a situation, not the 2-point conversion, I know it's only football, but where you're trying to base it on like a decision point, the actual goal isn't survival. The actual goal isn't to just extend the game. Going to overtime isn't the ultimate goal, right? Going to overtime just gives you a 50% chance of success. That's not why we're playing. We're not playing. We're not getting the ball back and scoring and getting the ball back and scoring. We're not doing that with the ultimate goal of extending the game for as long as we possibly can, right? We're not doing that to hopefully just go to overtime. What is the goal? The goal is to win the game. It's not survival. It's not to extend. It's backwards of how we want to naturally think about decisions. We want to naturally think about it as just survive, chill, keep going, everything's cool. The longer it goes, the longer we survive, good, right? That's just how you naturally think. But in these decision points, it's the total opposite. So if you focus on what decision point will help me win this game in regulation, the extra points are way worse. Because the extra points give you a 100% chance to not win in regulation. You're down 14. If you kick the extra points, you're actively not trying to win in regulation. You're trying to go to overtime. You're trying to get the 50% instead of taking the extra percentage chance to win the game in overtime. You almost get a free chance. Well, you do. You literally do. You get a free chance to win the game. Because even if you don't successfully make the free chance, you should have a 50% chance to make the second 2-point conversion, thus tying the game, thus getting you to overtime, doing the exact same thing you were trying to do with the extra point in the first place, right? It's as easy as that. And this basic level math, basic level algebra, has people in the media completely lost. Because it's so against the norm. It's so against the outside. It's seemingly such an outside way of looking at football or sports or decisions. But it's not. It's actually the less risky. If you look at this chart, it's way more risky to go to overtime. You're accepting basically a 12% less chance to win the game just because you want to go to overtime for no reason. Why would you make the riskier decision? Makes no sense, right? And like we just said, I don't blame people for being kind of against this because it does go against our natural feeling of extend and survive and all that stuff. So totally understandable, 100%. Another situation to kind of think about would be, let's say you're down 7 and you score with 1 second left, and you can either go for 2 or kick. And let's say, universal truth, you have a 50% chance of winning in overtime and you have a 100% chance of making the extra point. But let's say you have a 75% chance of success on a 3-yard play. Let's say you've got a 3-yard play that it's just 75%. You're almost always converting. You're almost always getting it. It seems super risky to go for 2 and try and win the game, right? It seems like, man, this is like the most risky decision ever to just win it right here. But if your success percentage is skewed to where you actually have 25% of a better chance of success by going for it, is it risky? Is it risky, or is it riskier to say, you know what, I'd rather just make it a coin toss? It's way riskier to make it a coin toss. Now, sometimes you may think, well, we only have like a 50% chance of getting this 2-point conversion. And if that's the case, then yeah, you might as well just, go to overtime. Sure. But that's kind of how you can evaluate those decision points. And that's what ESPN Analytics does. That's all they're doing is they put up, they're showing, because all they put up on the screen is go for it or not go for it. But what their algorithm's spitting out is percent success and percent success over here, just the two options. And whichever percentage is higher, they're spitting it out. But this is a good example of how these quote unquote risky decisions really aren't. And it's actually the opposite. And this is important, guys, because like we've talked about before, we're only at the beginning of this. We're only at the beginning of this huge divide between the old school style of sports commentators and the analysis and like if you watch like CBS NFL pregame, like with Bill Cowher on all those guys, they are always about Don't go for it on fourth down. Take the points. Kick the field goal. They're always about that. And it's just because they never did this. This was not part of the game. Part of the game was you score, kick the extra point, unless you absolutely have to go for two. It's fourth down, punt. It's fourth down, kick a field goal. Going for it on fourth down when I was growing up watching football, which was only a little over 20 years ago, was when I was 8, 9 years old, something like that. When that was happening, like if you went for it on fourth down, it was a huge moment. And now there's games where people go for it 6, 7, 8 times a game. A fake punt, going for it instead of kicking a field goal, that was insane. 2-point conversion, you may see one of those a season. Now you see it just whenever. But I just wanted to kind of highlight this because I've been seeing a lot of people on Twitter and a lot of people going back and forth on what's right and what, how you should quantify it and how you should look at it. I hope this makes sense as far as like the chart and the graph. And I think it does. I think it's very simple. We have it right there. We have each situation. We have the universal truths. We have the kick situation, the go for two situation, and then the easy algebra. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Are you kind of noticing more of this? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And like I said, you do have to factor in some other things. You have to factor in, the human element of stuff, but strictly from a data point, this is how it's done. And this is how that specific situation of down 14, you score with, a minute, 2 minutes, whatever to go. This is how that plays out. But let me know in the comments below what you think, where you come down on this. Did this help? Did this kind of illuminate a little bit of why this situation is so tricky, or how announcers kind of get this one wrong? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.